On October 9th, 2024, about an hour before I planned to lock up the shop, a clean, well-kept 4Runner rolled into my bay, making a sound I could hear before it even came to a stop. Not a knock, not a grind. A low, steady whine that rose and fell with road speed, like something spinning that had grown tired of spinning. The owner wasn't panicked, he was resigned. He slid a folded estimate across my workbench and told me a dealership had already looked at it. Told him the damage was internal, that a major driveline component would have to come out, and that he was staring down a bill somewhere north of $3,000. Today I am revealing why that whine almost never means what the dealer says it means, and how a single $50 fluid, one your Toyota dealer will quietly let you forget about for the entire life of your truck, protects one of the most expensive components you own. By the end of this, you will understand exactly what this fluid is, why it gets skipped on nearly every service visit, and how a 15-minute job most owners never hear about can save you thousands. Let me tell you what I actually found on that 4Runner, because it's the whole point. I put it on the lift, slid underneath, and went straight to a small drain plug tucked between the transmission and the rear drive shaft. I cracked it open, and what came out wasn't fluid anymore. It was dark, almost black, thin as water, and it carried a faint metallic shimmer when it hit the drain pan. Tiny flecks of metal suspended in oil that should have been honey-colored and thick. The level was low, too. This truck had a little over 120,000 miles on it, and by every indication, that fluid had never once been changed. Not by the previous owner, not by the dealer, not by anyone. It had been left to slowly cook itself for the entire life of the vehicle. That fluid lives in a component called the transfer case, and if you drive a 4x4 Toyota, a Tacoma, a 4Runner, a Tundra, a Land Cruiser, this is the single most overlooked part on your truck. The transfer case is the heart of your four-wheel drive system. It's a compact gearbox bolted to the back of your transmission, and its entire job is to take the power coming out of the transmission and split it, sending it to both the front and rear axles when you need it. It's what lets you shift into 4 high on a snowy on-ramp or drop into 4 low when you're crawling up a rutted trail. Without it, your 4x4 is just a truck with an expensive badge. And here is the part almost nobody realizes. It does its job using its own separate reservoir of fluid, completely independent from your engine oil and your transmission fluid. Different oil, different fill, different drain plug. And it gets ignored by nearly everyone. Here's why it gets ignored, and this is where I need to be honest with you about how this industry actually works. When you take your Toyota in for service, the shop makes its money on volume and on the jobs that are quick, familiar, and easy to sell. An oil change is on the menu, a tire rotation is on the menu, an air filter, a set of wiper blades, a cabin filter. Those get offered every single time because they're printed right there on the service ticket, and the advisor is trained to walk down the list. Transfer case fluid is not on that list. It's buried in the back of your owner's manual under a maintenance schedule most people never open, and even there, Toyota's language is soft. Under normal driving conditions, they'll tell you to inspect it, not necessarily replace it. Inspect. That word does a lot of quiet work because inspect means nobody is obligated to actually change anything. And a fluid that gets inspected but never replaced is a fluid that slowly turns into what I drained out of that 4Runner. Now stack another belief on top of that. A huge number of Toyota owners tell themselves the same thing. I never really use four-wheel drive, so I don't need to worry about it. I live in the city. I've maybe put it in 4 high twice. That transfer case is basically brand new. And that logic feels airtight, which is exactly why it's so dangerous. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Your transfer case is working every single mile you drive, whether you're in four-wheel drive or not. The main shaft inside it is connected directly to your transmission output, which means it's spinning constantly every time the wheels turn. The bearings are turning. The gears are meshing. Heat is building and cooling with every drive and every parking lot shutdown. The fluid is being sheared, thinned, and slowly contaminated, and it does all of that whether you ever touch the four-wheel drive lever or not. The idea that an unused 4x4 system stays fresh is a myth, and it's a myth that costs people real money. And there's one more detail that makes this fluid different from almost everything else on your truck. It has no filter. Think about that for a second. Your engine oil runs through a filter that traps metal particles and grit before they can circulate back through. Your transmission has a filter doing the same job. The transfer case has nothing. Every bit of metal that wears off the gears and the chain inside, and there's always a little, stays suspended in that fluid and keeps circulating over and over, grinding through the very bearings it's supposed to protect. Fresh fluid holds those particles safely and carries a strong additive package that cushions the metal-on-metal contact. Old fluid does the opposite. Once the additives are exhausted and the oil has thinned out, that metallic sludge becomes a kind of liquid sandpaper, and it goes to work on the most expensive parts inside the case. I want you to picture the inside of a transfer case like the chain on a bicycle. When that chain is clean and properly oiled, it glides silently and lasts for years. Let the oil dry out and grit work its way in, and the chain starts to stretch. The teeth start to wear, and eventually the whole thing skips and grinds. The chain inside your transfer case works the same way. As the fluid degrades, that chain stretches microscopically, the bearings develop play, and the gears lose their crisp fit. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens so slowly that you never notice the day-to-day change, right up until the moment it starts to whine. That whine, the exact sound that 4Runner made when it rolled into my shop, is very often the first thing an owner ever hears, and by then the damage has been building silently for years. So let me finish the story because this is the part that matters. I drained that black metallic fluid completely, cleaned the drain plug, installed a fresh crush washer, and refilled the case with the correct fresh gear oil. A little under 1.5 quarts is all it takes. I dropped the truck, took it around the block, and the whine had dropped dramatically. Not gone entirely, and I told the owner the truth right there in the bay. Some wear had already happened, and I couldn't reverse that. But the fresh fluid quieted it, cushioned what was left, and bought him a lot more life out of a transfer case the dealer had all but written off. I told him something else, too. If he'd done this one $50 service every 30,000 miles, we would never have been having the conversation at all. He got lucky. Another 20,000 miles on that dead fluid, and the dealer's $3,000 estimate would have become his reality. That's the whole equation, and it's almost embarrassing how lopsided it is. On one side, you have a 15-minute drain and fill using 2 quarts of quality gear oil and a couple of cheap crush washers. Call it $50 in parts if you do it yourself, maybe a bit more if a shop does it. On the other side, you have a transfer case rebuild or replacement that runs anywhere from $2,000 to well over $3,000 once you factor in the part and the labor to pull it. A dealer has very little reason to remind you about the $50 side of that equation because the $50 side doesn't sell parts, doesn't fill labor hours, and doesn't show up as much on an invoice. The $3,000 side does. I'm not telling you every advisor is out to get you. Most are just working down a menu that was never designed to protect your wallet. But the result is the same either way, and the person who pays for that gap is always the owner. Let me give you the specifics so you can actually act on this. For most Toyota 4x4s, the transfer case takes a gear oil. The older trucks, roughly 2009 and earlier, call for a 75W90 rated GL4 or GL5, and the newer ones from about 2010 onward move to a lighter 75W fluid, mostly for a tiny fuel economy gain. Both are widely available in quality synthetic, and a good synthetic 75W90 GL4 GL5 is a safe, common choice that plenty of Toyota techs run. Always check your specific model and year in the manual or against a trusted source before you buy. I'm not going to pretend one bottle fits every truck, because it doesn't. The capacity is small, right around 1.5 quarts, so 2 quarts covers you with a little to spare. Grab the correct crush washers for the drain and fill plugs while you're at it, because you want fresh ones every time. And the interval? Toyota's severe service schedule points to around every 30,000 miles. And honestly, for a fluid this cheap, protecting a part this expensive, treating 30,000 as your number is smart insurance, regardless of how you drive. While you're under there, I'll give you the bonus that turns this from a good habit into a genius one. Your truck has 2 more of these forgotten fluids, the front differential and the rear differential. Same story exactly. Separate reservoirs, no filters, quietly ignored on every service visit, and every bit as capable of grenading into a 4-figure repair when they're neglected. They typically run a 75W85 gear oil on the modern Toyotas, and doing all 3 at once, transfer case, front differential, and rear differential, is the move that separates the owners whose trucks quietly cross 200,000 miles from the ones who get blindsided by a driveline bill they never saw coming. It's a couple of hours of work or one affordable shop visit, and it's the closest thing to a longevity cheat code that exists for a 4x4. Now, let me be straight with you about the limits, because I'd rather you trust me than oversell you. Fresh fluid is prevention, not resurrection. If a transfer case is already whining loudly, already grinding, already worn past spec, new oil will quiet it and slow the decline, but it won't undo damage that's already done. This is a service that pays off biggest when you do it early and keep doing it, long before you ever hear a sound. The whole point is to never let it get to the whine in the first place. And that's exactly why it's so easy to skip. A healthy transfer case gives you no symptoms, no warning light, no drama. There's nothing pushing you to act. Which means the owners who protect this component aren't the ones reacting to a problem. They're the ones who understood the game early and got ahead of it. So here's what I'll leave you with. The most expensive repairs on a 4x4 are almost never the ones that break suddenly. They're the ones that were quietly avoidable for pennies, ignored for years, and then presented to you as a catastrophe. This transfer case fluid is the perfect example. Cheap, forgotten, and standing guard over a part worth 50 times its price. You don't need to be a mechanic to protect it. You just need to know it exists, which now you do. If this changed how you think about your 4x4, do me a favor and hit that like button so more Toyota owners see it before their dealer does. Subscribe if you want more of these forgotten fixes that keep your truck alive and your money in your pocket. And if you've ever had a shop try to sell you a transfer case or a differential you could have saved with a $50 fluid change, drop that story in the comments, because the more of us who know this, the fewer of us get caught. take care of that fluid, and your 4x4 will take care of you a lot longer than the dealer expects it to.